So ever since the Gina Carano firing, a lot of people have been speculating, including myself, that Kathleen Kennedy has a conspiracy against the Mandalorian, that Kathleen Kennedy is trying to take Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni down as much as possible before she is fired from Lucasfilm. Well, I'm here to tell you today that that conspiracy is actually going through, and that plan is really heating up recently. Let's check it out. So like I said, it's been a very common theory by a lot of Star Wars YouTubers, a lot of fans in this YouTube space in general, that Kathleen Kennedy has something against the Mandalorian, that Kathleen Kennedy is trying to sabotage Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni to a certain extent to try and make herself look better. We already know that Kathleen Kennedy has her own Filoniverse type thing going on with the High Republic. She saw what Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni were doing. She saw that Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni were winning the trust of the Disney execs, the Disney higher ups, and she was like, you know what, if they can do that, then I can probably do it myself as well. So she started up the High Republic and tried to do a Mandoverse type thing, but it fell flat on its face because you know what they did? They tried to push that SJW, that woke agenda in the High Republic more than they pushed the storytelling. And I'm not saying that the storytelling was god awful, because they have some very good authors involved in that storytelling. Claudia Gray, one of my favorite Star Wars authors, but when it comes to the advertising side of things, that's where it fell flat on its face. That's why I didn't really read any of the books. I read like the first half of Light of the Jedi and just kind of got bored. I didn't think it was god awful, but I just kind of lost interest. And then when it came to the advertising for the future books, I was just kind of like, you know what? I'm not going to look into this. I don't have any interest in these books. If this is how they're going to handle the marketing, if this is going to be how they handle the advertising for these books, just virtue signal after virtue signal, just woke agenda being pushed down our throats once again. And I've heard good things about the books, man. I'm not saying that the stories were god awful, but the advertising is what sets it apart from the Mandalorian. The agenda that is there, the agenda that is very present, is what sets it apart from the Mandalorian. Just look at the difference between the Mandalorian advertising and the High Republic advertising. There's an agenda being pushed clearly in one of the advertising, and there's only a storyline being pushed clearly in the other advertising. The Mandalorian is only pushing storylines, while the High Republic is only pushing agendas. And I'm only talking about the marketing. I'm not talking about the actual story. I've heard that the agendas aren't being pushed that much in the story, that it's only the advertising, but that's enough for me. The advertising is enough for me to say, you know what? I'm not going to check those out. I don't really have that much interest in that if that's what you're going to do. But in today's video, I'm going to be telling you about a conspiracy that Kathleen Kennedy has to actually take down the Mandalorian. And it's not just Kathleen Kennedy. It goes deeper into Lucasfilm. It's all of her disciples, everyone that's on her side of the Civil War. And honestly, it's really obvious. This keeps happening over and over again. Like I said earlier on, after the Gina Carano firing, this was a very common theory that a lot of people had, that Kathleen Kennedy was trying to sabotage the Mandalorian. And I didn't really believe it at first. You know, I kind of thought that in the back of my head, that maybe this was a ploy by Kathleen Kennedy to try and ruin the Mandoverse, because we knew that Jon Favreau had big plans for Gina Carano, but this isn't just a Gina Carano thing. This is a Mandalorian thing. Everyone remembers this, but Gina Carano was fired from the Mandalorian because of cancel culture. And then right after that, Rosario Dawson was almost fired because of cancel culture. The cancel culture mob went after her, and it was kind of like, okay, this is a little bit of a recurring theme. Why is this happening to two back-to-back Mandalorian actors or actresses and not happening to anyone from this sequel trilogy? Why doesn't any of the directors from the sequel trilogy? Why doesn't Kathleen Kennedy ever come under fire from cancel culture? Why doesn't J.J. Abrams or Rian Johnson or anyone else involved in the sequels, Daisy Ridley, Adam Driver, John Boyega? I'm not saying I want it to happen to any of them. I don't think this should happen to anyone. I don't think any single person should ever lose their job because they're expressing opinions on social media, unless those opinions are inciting violence or something like that. Then maybe you should lose your job. Then maybe there should be some consequences. But when you're just expressing some opinions, some unpopular opinions on social media, and they're not being harmful, they're not inciting violence or anything like that, you shouldn't be losing your job. I don't care if I like you, if I dislike you, if I disagree with you, or if I agree with you. You shouldn't lose your job over expressing opinions on social media. I'm just saying there's a clear correlation here to Star Wars actors, to Star Wars directors, to people involved in Star Wars being canceled. And it's only happening to people on The Mandalorian. It's not happening to anyone in the High Republic. It's not happening to anyone outside of the Mandoverse on any of these projects outside of the Mandoverse. It didn't happen to anyone during the sequel trilogy. And we all know these people can look hard enough to find dirt on anyone that they want to, on Kathleen Kennedy, on any of the Disney higher ups, anyone who has a Twitter account and has had a Twitter account for a few years before this stuff actually started happening, before cancel culture was a thing, before you couldn't express your true feelings on social media without getting canceled. Anyone who's had a Twitter account for any time at all has dirt on them, has enough on them that these cancel culture weirdos can go out and find to cancel you. So why haven't they been doing that? for the sequel trilogy? Why weren't they doing that during the sequel trilogy era? Why aren't they doing that for the authors of the High Republic or Leslie Headland or anyone who's outside of the Mandoverse working on these projects? And Rosario Dawson wasn't the only one outside of Gina Carano. We already have two. We already have Gina Carano fired. And then we had Rosario Dawson. Cancel culture sets their sights on Rosario Dawson to be canceled. That kind of failed. But we also had Carl Weathers almost canceled because of this tweet right here. So wonderful to have the opportunity to work with the very beautiful Gina. She's making her way through a very demanding industry as an artist and craftsperson, and she's hitting so many of the right notes. Nothing but upside waiting for her. And if you realize the date of this was January 26th, and that was right before she got fired. That was when the cancel culture mob was coming after her extremely hard, and Disney was looking for a reason to fire her. Kathleen Kennedy was looking for a reason to fire her, and Carl Weathers actually went on to tweet a few more things even after she was fired, a few pictures, a few videos of Gina Carano, talking positively of Gina Carano after this, and the cancel culture mob just went after Carl Weathers really hard, tried to get him fired. It didn't work. It didn't quite pick up enough steam to actually cancel him. But once again, just very, very strange that this is happening to so many Mandalorian universe actors and actresses and people involved in that universe. And it didn't happen in any sequel trilogy. It didn't happen to anyone involved in the sequel trilogy. No actors, no writers, no directors, no one. Not Kathleen Kennedy, not anyone else at Disney. Really, it's just the Mandalorian universe that people are getting canceled over. And I think that this is definitely a ploy by Kathleen Kennedy to try and get people canceled, to try and ruin, to try and sabotage the Mandalorian universe, to try and sabotage what Jon and Dave are doing over there. And finally, recently, we have this. The Mandalorian Sasha Banks under fire for, I can't say that word on YouTube, controversy. Sasha Banks is now being canceled. Shocker. Yet another person involved in the Mandalorian universe being canceled. Now, this is 4 people that I've listed off in this video, and I'm sure there have been more attempts on social media for other people to be, actually Bill Burr as well. Bill Burr, they almost canceled Bill Burr as well. I totally forgot about Bill Burr, but he was almost canceled as well. That's 5 people involved in the Mandalorian universe that have been almost canceled by the woke Twitter mob, by the cancel culture mob on Twitter. This has to be something going on. It just has to be. And then if you look back, whenever they wrote that hit piece on Geeks and Gamers and all those other people in the fandom menace that they call all those free thinkers, all those people like Gina Carano, all those people like Geeks and Gamers, everyone else associated with Geeks and Gamers, the fandom menace, all those people who don't agree with things that Disney Star Wars has done, they call them all those buzzwords that are actually very offensive and can get people fired from their jobs. I remember they put Drunk 3PO in there just saying that Chuck Wendig was fired, when that's a literal fact. Chuck Wendig was fired, but they put him in there calling him all of these words that can get him fired from his job if his job were to see that. It's absolutely ridiculous. They're willing to go as far as to tear someone's livelihood down to get them canceled. And you had Lucasfilm employees retweeting that story, that BS story, that story that was completely untrue, but you had Lucasfilm employees retweeting that stuff to try and take them down, to try and take down anyone who doesn't love the sequel trilogy. So we already had Kathleen Kennedy and Lucasfilm put these employees out there, put these people on Twitter to try and push that agenda, to try and push that stuff forward, to get people canceled who don't deserve it, who simply disagree with the stuff that you're making. We've already seen it. It's already happened before. So what makes it so different now? Why couldn't Kathleen Kennedy put some Lucasfilm employees out there now to try and get people like Gina Carano canceled, to try and get people like Rosario Dawson or Carl Weathers, or now Sasha Banks even canceled? Why couldn't this be Kathleen Kennedy? I 100% think it is Kathleen Kennedy, because every single thing that we're hearing about Kathleen Kennedy recently is that she's on the verge of being fired. That come October, when October 31st hits, Kathleen Kennedy will no longer be employed by Disney, by Lucasfilm. She will not be there anymore. Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni will be in complete creative control. Now, I don't know who the new president will be. It's probably not going to be Jon Favreau or Dave Filoni. That's my guess. I think they would be perfect at the job. I think Jon Favreau would make a perfect studio head, but I don't think it's going to be him. I think he wants to stick to the creative stuff, but this has to be Kathleen Kennedy. This has to be a ploy by Kathleen Kennedy and her disciples to get the Mandalorian universe ruined, because there's no true one star of the Mandalorian universe. You can't really cancel one person and ruin the whole universe. You have to get everyone canceled. There's not like Pedro Pascal can be canceled from The Mandalorian and then the whole Mandalorian universe is ruined. Not really. He's barely ever on the set. He's only doing VO work, and you can get someone else that sounds just like Pedro Pascal to go do that VO work and just recast him for the very few scenes that he will have his helmet off for. It's not going to be that big of a deal. It's not going to ruin the entire universe. So you have to just take all of them down if you're going to sabotage this universe, and that's exactly what they're doing. It's so obvious to me. I don't know how it's not obvious to everyone else. At first, when Gina was fired and people were saying, oh, that's Kathleen Kennedy trying to sabotage Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni, I was like, okay, man, that sounds a little bit tinfoil hat. I mean, maybe. That thought did cross my mind in the back of my head, but I didn't really think that was going on. I didn't think Kathleen Kennedy was that low, that she would stoop to that level to try and get people canceled, to ruin their livelihoods in order to cancel, to sabotage The Mandalorian. But I think that's what's going on. And you can call me tinfoil hat all you want, but the proof is there. Whenever you have 5 different people getting canceled, there's 5 people getting canceled from The Mandalorian or attempted to be canceled from The Mandalorian for really, in reality, not doing anything wrong. None of them did anything wrong at all. Whenever you have 5 of them being canceled from one show, and you didn't get anyone being attempted canceled off the sequel trilogy, no one from the High Republic, no one outside of the Mandalorian universe being attempted to be canceled off of social media, it's just the Mandalorian. So something has to be going on here. I think it's Kathleen Kennedy. You can let me know what you think in the comments. I truly think this is a ploy by Kathleen Kennedy and all of her disciples at Lucasfilm. But like I said, let me know what you think in the comments about this whole situation. What do you think about all of these people from the Mandalorian getting canceled? And what do you think about it being possibly Kathleen Kennedy trying to sabotage Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni? Let me know what you think in the comments. But if you did enjoy this video, please leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel. If you want to follow me on Twitter or join the Discord, put those links will be in the description as well. Thank you for watching the video. Hope to see you in the next one.